Hey, Tubies! This is Bob Hickman. Well, hey, it's Monday and it's a new week, and I couldn't think of a better way to start the new week than to be here with all of you. I want to say thank you to all of you who came out to yesterday's video, which was on my new Book of Shadows. It was a birthday gift to me from Lady Angela of Rare Wicca Spells. And if you haven't seen that, check it out. It's a wonderful video, and a lot of you seem really excited about it. So, yeah, make sure to see that today as well. Well, I'm here today. I promised you we would have another talk about crystals, and particularly crystals related to the ancient and mystical continent of Atlantis. Now, last week I did a video, which I would kind of call this part one, which was on Lemuria and its crystals. And as many of you remember, this is my crystal that I'm wearing. This is actually a Lemurian crystal. But today we're going to talk about Atlantis and its use of crystals. Now, Atlantis is an ancient culture. It actually predates the most ancient Egyptian cultures. So we're probably going back around 30,000 years. And just to show you where Atlantis is, let me put a map up here for you. So as you can see, Atlantis is off the eastern seaboard of the United States. Now, I live right in Virginia on the east coast of the United States, and every time I go to the beach, I am always looking for crystals. And whenever I go to the sea, I feel the vibration of Atlantis. So for me, Atlantis isn't so much a myth, it's actually a reality in my day-to-day life. And I imagine there are a number of mystics, particularly on the East Coast here of the United States, who probably feel the same. And if you're a mystic and you've sensed Atlantis as you walked along the eastern seashore in the United States, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. You know, the Atlanteans were fascinating. Now, you know, we have, as we talked about last week, the Lemurians. Now, the Lemurians, as you know, were known for their great psychic gifts. They were very attuned, very mystical. The Lemurians started out very ethereal. They were almost like spirit people, and then they took on flesh. Whereas the Atlanteans are much more organic. They kind of evolved as part of the earth and were already in human form when their civilization started. Now, the Atlanteans are a little different than the Lemurians. Well, let me explain it this way. They have some similarities and some differences. One of the similarities that the Atlanteans share with the Lemurians is that they are very intellectual and very psychic. The Atlanteans were very into mysticism. They had an ancient religion where they honored the life force, the flame of life. And like the Lemurians, the Atlanteans built giant temples out of crystals. Now, what's fascinating about the Atlantean temples is that they, many of their temples look like pyramids. And I'll put some pictures up here of an Atlantean pyramid temple. So as you can see, the Atlanteans were very gifted people. Now, what's fascinating about the Atlanteans is that they had such advanced technology. They were actually able to even make, they understood the process of anti-gravity. And it's said that they even made platforms and buildings that would float in the air. I'll put a picture up here for you. So as you can see, the Atlanteans were fascinating. Now, it's very much believed that the Atlanteans predated, well, of course they did not believe, it is true, that they predated the Egyptian culture. And it is also believed that the ancient Greek culture was influenced by Atlantis. I believe it was Socrates or Plato. I can't remember which now. I got to look it up. But one of the great philosophers talked about Atlantis in his writings. And so it showed that the ancient Greek culture had knowledge of Atlantis. And so this, what many people call today as a myth, really is just simply a piece of history that has not been fully explored. I always say, I think what the history that the traditional and official, and I put that in quotes, official version of history really is only half the truth. Because if we factor in the reality of Atlantis, then a lot of the mysteries that we're finding nowadays start to make sense. For example, are you aware of the giant pyramids off the coast of Bermuda? You're going, what? Oh no, this is fact. Scientists have now, using sonar imagery, discovered that there are pyramids under the water off the coast of Bermuda that are larger than the Egyptian pyramids. That's right, you can research this. The first discovery came around 1968 by a diver who was actually just out on a vacation doing diving and uncovered a glowing pyramid under the water. There are a few different types. There's, from what I've heard, some of the pyramids off Bermuda are like stones, like the traditional Egyptian, but they're made of a black sort of granite or a black basalt sort of stone. There's another type of pyramid which is solid crystal, pure, clear as glass crystal. And then there's a third type of pyramid which is part stone and part crystal. So I'll put pictures up here for you to see that as well. Now, this does seem to be true. And in fact, I've heard people who have written to me personally and said, Bob, I've been off the coast of Bermuda and you can see the glow coming from under the water. So I'm thinking about taking a trip to Bermuda. I really want to directly investigate this. I think this is phenomenal. From what I've heard, a lot of the traditional scientists are just looking the other way. Now, why would they do that? Well, if Atlantis is true, it throws into chaos the traditional history of the world as we know it. But I tell you, I've seen it, that it is true as a psychic, and many other psychics besides myself have seen it. Back in the 1940s, the famous sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce made a prediction that there was an Atlantean culture and that Atlantis would rise again. He said that the continent would literally come up out of the water. Now, I've heard some people say that they've seen pyramids rise and then sink in that area. The area that we're talking about is the Bermuda Triangle. And I'm going to put a map up here so you can see this region. Now, I've done a previous video on the Bermuda Triangle, but I think it's worth touching in on here again because this is the area where a lot of paranormal phenomena is happening. Now, people are speculating what is going on there. Now, as a psychic, and I look into it, what I'm getting around that is that there is an open space-time portal, like a wormhole. I believe that the Atlanteans, using their crystal pyramids, were able to open doorways, dimensional doorways, that allowed alien cultures to come through. I have received it in vision that alien cultures were in regular communion with the people of Atlantis. And it was from these exchanges of cultural visits that many of the Atlantean ancient technologies evolved. I do believe that what has happened is after the destruction of Atlantis, which we'll get to in a minute, that the portals were never properly sealed. And when we have the phenomena of the Bermuda Triangle, such as ships disappearing, planes just disappearing, instruments on boats going crazy, people have said that in the Bermuda Triangle, compasses don't function right, electrical equipment goes awry, all sort of crazy things. Well, I believe that's because the energy from the sunken pyramids is warping the kind of the electrical energy in the area, and also there's a dimensional portal that continually opens and closes. This is what accounts for, I believe, the disruption in that area. And I believe that all of that is connected to ancient Atlantis. So if that's true, which I do believe in time we will definitely prove, this is going to be probably one of the most earth-shattering revelations on the history of the earth. I believe that many of the aliens are still using those portals from Atlantis to come into the earth realm. There are many sightings in the Bermuda Triangle area of ships and spacecraft literally emerging up out of the water. Now, if those portals are sunk, that would make sense because they're using it and they're entering through the water and then coming up out of the water. Very, very fascinating. You know, one of the great treasures that still exist are the crystals of Atlantis. And I have some special treats here for you today. Now, this is, as I showed you, my Lemurian crystal. And this is one of my Atlantean crystals. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's kind of hard with the glare. I have a few of them. Let me show them to you here. Here's one of them. And here's another one. Beautiful, beautiful, shimmering glass-like crystals. Aren't those lovely? This one's quite weighty, quite a large crystal. The Atlantean crystals, oh, here's another one. Let me show this to you. Isn't that beautiful as well? The Atlantean crystals are a little different than the Lemurian crystals. The Lemurian crystals tend to be longer and thinner, whereas I find that the Atlantean crystals are much more squat. They both have a hexagonal form, but the Atlantean ones tend to be a little milkier. They're not always as clear, and they're squatter. They're kind of short and fat. Kind of like a difference between a fire hydrant and an obelisk. But they're both equally valuable. It's believed that the ancient Atlanteans used crystals, one, to create pyramids that open portals, and they would also use them for healing. Now, in addition to that, many Atlanteans were fascinated with crystals and would wear them as their own personal jewelry as well. It's believed that the Atlanteans understood the secret of the crystal and used it to their maximum benefit. The struggle that the Atlanteans had, though, was that they let their intellect override their heart. Now, you know, we talk about the chakras, and last week we talked about the Lemurians and the heart chakra. Well, the Atlanteans tended to use the third eye and the crown chakra, very intellectual. The problem is they became disconnected from their heart, and it led them to create energy weapons using their crystals. Now, the very crystals they used to make the pyramids and space-time portals and healing crystals, they then took those and evolved them into weapons of mass destruction. Now, remember last week we talked about that? Well, unfortunately, the Atlanteans, their intellect, disconnected from their heart, created their downfall. And what happened is that they began to war among themselves and vie for power. And they used these energy weapons in a war. It was like a nuclear war. And it literally cataclysmized, it destroyed, created cataclysm. I can't say the word. It destroyed Atlantis. And Atlantis literally sunk beneath the waves. And there are many people who tell about the remnants of Atlantis surviving. Some people did survive that. They escaped it. In fact, there were many prophets in those days, who knew the coming destruction and tried to warn the Atlanteans, but they did not heed the advice, and so their civilization destroyed itself. The remnants of Atlantis that survived are believed to be the founders of the ancient Egyptian civilization. And again, as we've talked about, it's also believed that the ancient Egyptians had regular ongoing connections to alien cultures. And I believe that if we look at the various ancient cultures, such as the Mesoamerican cultures of the Incas, the Aztecs, we notice also that they have pyramids, which are hauntingly familiar to the Egyptian pyramids and the Atlantean pyramids. Could it be that the Atlantean culture's remnants survived and infiltrated to other parts of the world? I think so. So I just want to come here today and just touch in on this concept. The concept that Atlantis is still influencing us today. I would encourage you, seek out Lemurian crystals. If you want to tune into Atlantis and work with that energy, get some Lemurian crystals. Atlantean crystals. They're not expensive, and you can really feel the energy of Atlantis. One of the things that you can do is take your crystals in hands. If you have two, put one in each hand and close your eyes and just open to the energy of the crystals. Ask that an electric current be made that will allow you to see and to know about this ancient culture. I believe that many of the ascended masters that are working with the earth today, such as the Count of Saint Germain, also are helping people to channel Atlantean energies. See, it's been my experience as a psychic that there are many people on the earth today who are actually reincarnated from the time of Atlantis. I actually happen to be an Atlantean who is reincarnated. This has been revealed to me through my past life regressions, as well as other psychics who I've met who have said, Bob, you're from Atlantis. And you know, deep within, I've always felt that. And when I picked up the Atlantean crystals, it was confirmed. So working with the crystals will help you to understand that energy of Atlantis. Now, you don't have to be a reincarnated Atlantean to work with Atlantean energy. The challenge for the Atlanteans today who are reincarnated is to remember to connect the intellect with the heart. And see, I believe that's why a lot of Atlanteans are now back. We're back to learn that lesson and to implement it. So we want to focus on the heart chakra as well as the third eye and the crown. The third eye gives vision. The crown gives channeling. It gives intellect. It gives knowledge. It gives messages. But remember, receiving knowledge with disconnection from the heart can lead to destruction. So we Atlanteans reincarnated must bring in the heart chakra. And this is why also I encourage you to work with the Lemurian crystals. You can use the Lemurian crystals to stimulate the heart and the Atlantean crystals to stimulate the psychic mind and vision. And together you will bring balance. Anyways, guys, I'm going to put some more pictures up here of crystals and Atlantis, and I just want you to look at it. And listen, tell me in the box below, have you ever worked with an Atlantean crystal? Have you ever thought about Atlantis? What's your thoughts on Atlantis? Maybe you, like me, have walked along the seashore and felt the call from the waves that Atlantis was still with us. Maybe you've been to Bermuda and even seen a pyramid under the water. As I've heard from people, you can literally go out in boats at night off the coast and you can look into the water because it's very clear and see the glowing capstone of one of the pyramids. So, very fascinating. So tell me in the box below about your experiences with Atlantis, your thoughts, your experience with Atlantean crystals. What do you know? Maybe you've had a past life regression, or maybe you've had a dreaming, or somehow you just know. I always say these things are intuitive until science catches up with us, which one day it will, and it will prove all that we psychics are saying. Till then, we have to work with the inner senses, and the inner knowing, the intuition, the insight, and the psychic self. And that is no less valid than any scientific principle. Anyways, guys, I'm so glad you're here. I look forward to hearing from you. Put some comments in the box below, and make sure to like this, favorite, share it with your friends. Be back here tomorrow for messages from the spirit world. I'm so glad you're here. This is Bob Hickman. Keep it here. We'll see you tomorrow. Blessings to all of you.